Every single American mom who has walked into an Australian supermarket for the first time has had the same experience. It does not matter where they are from. It does not matter whether they are from a small town in the Midwest or a major city on the coasts. It does not matter whether they consider themselves health conscious or not, budget savvy or not, experienced travelers or not. Every single one of them walks through those doors, looks around, and within about 4 minutes notices something that nobody warned them about. Something that seems small. Something that seems like it should not matter this much. And then they stand there in an aisle of a Woolworths or a Coles in suburban Australia, and they feel something that takes a moment to identify. It is not excitement exactly. It is not just surprise. It is something closer to grief, a very specific grocery-induced grief. And by the time they get home and unpack their bags, they are already dreading going back to their regular supermarket, because they know that what they have just experienced is something they cannot unexperience, and their regular supermarket is going to feel completely different now. Today we are going to walk through exactly what they notice, not the obvious things, not the accent on the signage or the unfamiliar brand names, the things underneath that. The structural, cultural, sensory differences that add up to an experience of grocery shopping that is so fundamentally unlike the American supermarket experience that women who spend years in Australia frequently describe their first trip back to an American grocery store as genuinely depressing. Let us start with the thing they notice first, the thing that hits before they have even reached the produce section. The smell. This sounds absurd, but it is consistently one of the first things mentioned when American visitors describe their initial experience of Australian supermarkets. Australian supermarkets do not smell like American supermarkets. American supermarkets have a particular scent that is so familiar to Americans that they do not even register it until they encounter an environment without it. A particular combination of refrigeration and artificial fragrance and cleaning products, and something underneath all of that which, if you press them, most Americans could not name but would immediately recognize as the smell of a place where a very large quantity of heavily processed food is stored in a very large building. Australian supermarkets smell more like food, fresh food specifically. The produce section is typically near the entrance, large, abundantly stocked, and not competing for sensory attention with the fragrance of 40 varieties of air freshener or the refrigerated aisle of ready meals that smell of nothing because they have been designed to smell of nothing. You walk in and it smells like fruit, like vegetables, like something that came out of the ground recently. And for American moms who have been grocery shopping in America their entire lives, this is a genuinely disorienting and almost immediately emotional experience that they struggle to explain to anyone who has not felt it. Now let us get to the produce section itself, because this is where the real recalibration begins. The produce in Australian supermarkets looks different from American supermarket produce. Not dramatically different, not categorically different, but different in a way that is immediately legible to anyone paying attention. The tomatoes are smaller and they smell like tomatoes. The strawberries are not uniform in size and they taste like strawberries. The stone fruit in season has color that runs all the way through it rather than only on the surface. The herbs are sold in larger bunches for prices that make American moms do small, involuntary calculations about what the equivalent would cost them at home. This is not about organic certification or premium labeling, or the Whole Foods premium that Americans associate with produce that actually has flavor. This is the mainstream, mid-range, Tuesday afternoon supermarket in a suburb that is not particularly wealthy and is not trying to be. This is just what the tomatoes are like here. This is just the baseline. American moms who grew up in an era of American supermarket produce, who have normalized the large, uniform, travel-resistant, flavor-optional tomato, describe the experience of eating a tomato from an Australian supermarket as almost confrontational. It is too much. It tastes too much like something. And the version of themselves that accepted the American tomato without complaint suddenly feels complicit in something they would like to renegotiate. Let us talk about the deli. The deli counter at a Woolworth's or a Kohl's is something that American visitors are genuinely unprepared for, not because it is so extraordinary that it defies description, but because it is so good relative to what they expected from a supermarket, from a mainstream, non-specialty, suburban grocery chain, that it produces a category error. This does not fit in the box labeled supermarket. This belongs in a box labeled delicatessen or specialty food store or somewhere that requires an appointment. The selection of fresh meats, the quality of the prepared salads, the variety of cheeses sold at the deli counter, the fresh bread from the in-store bakery that smells the way bread is supposed to smell. These things exist at a level of quality that the mainstream American supermarket simply does not attempt because it has learned over decades that Americans will not pay deli counter prices at a supermarket, and that it is more economical to stock the refrigerated aisle with prepackaged alternatives that have a longer shelf life and a lower labor cost. But the detail about the deli that American moms consistently mention, the specific detail that comes up again and again when they describe this experience, is the hot chicken. The hot chicken. Woolworths and Kohl's both sell freshly roasted chickens at their deli counters. This is not unusual in itself. American supermarkets sell rotisserie chickens too. The difference is in the timing, the price, and what happens at the end of the day. An Australian supermarket hot chicken costs somewhere around $10 to $13, depending on the store and the current pricing. It is a full bird. It was cooked in the store. It is hot, properly seasoned, and available for the taking alongside a container of roasted vegetables or a fresh salad from the same counter. And at the end of the day, as the closing time approaches, the price drops, sometimes significantly, sometimes to $5 or $6, because the store would rather move the stock at a reduced price than throw it away. Because the culture of the deli counter operates on the assumption that fresh food is worth selling cheaply rather than wasting. An American mom who discovers the end-of-day markdown on the hot chicken counter at a Woolworth's describes the experience in terms that are almost spiritual. She was not looking for it. Nobody told her it was there. She walked past, and she saw the sign, and she stopped, and she picked up a full roasted chicken for $6, and she stood at the counter for a moment in the particular stillness of a person who has just had something confirmed about the world that she suspected but could not prove. That it was possible, that this was something that could exist. A fresh, good, properly roasted chicken for $6 in a regular supermarket at the end of a regular Tuesday. She bought two. Now let us talk about the bread aisle. Because the bread situation in Australian supermarkets is one of those things that seems minor and is not. American supermarket bread is a product that has been engineered to satisfy a very specific set of commercial requirements. It should be inexpensive. It should last a long time. It should be consistent. It should be soft in a way that requires no chewing. It should compress into a paste when bitten, which is somehow the texture that the American bread market has decided the consumer prefers. It should have a very long list of ingredients, because a very long list of ingredients is what enables a loaf of bread to remain soft and mold-free for 10 days on a shelf without refrigeration. Australian supermarket bread, the standard, mid-range, nothing special bread you reach for because you need bread, is made with fewer ingredients, has a shorter shelf life, has a crust that is actually crisp and a crumb that has actual structure, goes stale within a couple of days, which is something that Australian grocery culture treats as evidence that the bread is real rather than as evidence that something has gone wrong. American moms who pay attention to bread, and many of them do, because bread has become a site of significant health-related anxiety in American food culture, walk down the bread aisle in an Australian supermarket and start reading labels with the focused attention of a person doing something important. And what they find is that the standard bread, not the artisan bread, not the specialty bread, not the bread in the section that costs 3 times as much, has an ingredient list that is recognizable and short, and does not include things that require a chemistry background to identify. This matters to them not because they were planning to audit the bread aisle. It matters because they were not planning to, and then they found themselves doing it anyway, and then they found themselves thinking about every loaf of bread they have ever bought at home. And that thought is not a comfortable one. Let us shift to the snack aisle, because the snack aisle is where the cultural difference becomes genuinely entertaining and also slightly confronting in equal measure. Australian snack culture is not without its sins. Australians eat chips and chocolate and biscuits with the same enthusiasm as any food-loving culture. The snack aisle in an Australian supermarket is not a wellness display, but there are differences that American moms notice. The serving sizes on Australian snack packaging are smaller. The ingredient lists are, on average, shorter. The flavor profiles are different in a way that is hard to describe, but has something to do with the fact that Australian snack food is generally less aggressively sweet, less coated in a layer of added sugar that sits on top of whatever flavor the food was originally trying to be. And the colors. The colors of Australian snack food packaging are different from American snack food packaging in a way that reflects a regulatory difference. Australia has stricter food dye regulations than the United States. Several artificial colors that are standard in American processed food, present in cereals, in candies, in sports drinks, in cheese-flavored crackers, are either restricted or absent from the equivalent Australian products. And for American moms who have spent time reading about food dyes and their potential effects on children, and have arrived at various conclusions about how much they would like their children to consume, walking down an Australian snack aisle and discovering that the thing they have been trying to minimize is simply less present in the baseline product, is another one of those quiet, slightly destabilizing recalibrations. Now let us talk about the checkout, because the checkout experience in an Australian supermarket is different from the American one in ways that are simultaneously small and revealing. In Australia, the default expectation at a supermarket checkout, even at the staffed lanes, not just the self-checkout, is that you bag your own groceries. The checkout operator scans. You bag. This is not considered a service failure. It is not something that requires a tip or an additional thank you or an acknowledgement that the operator has done something beyond their role. It is simply how the transaction works. You participate. You contribute your own labor to the completion of your own shopping trip, and you go home. American moms, accustomed to the staffed American checkout where the operator typically scans and bags while a second employee may assist, and where the social choreography of the exchange involves a degree of performance and scripted pleasantry that is its own small exercise in American service culture, find the Australian checkout experience initially abrupt and then, almost immediately, clarifying. There is nothing wrong with it. There is no coldness in it. There is simply no theater in it. It is a transaction. The food is scanned. You put it in a bag, you pay. You leave. And the checkout operator, who is being paid a real wage and does not need your performance of gratitude to make their shift economically viable, gives you a normal human goodbye rather than a scripted one. And the bag. The bag in Australia, or more precisely, the absence of the free single-use plastic bag that American supermarkets provided for decades as if bags were an infinite and weightless resource, is something that American visitors have mixed reactions to. Australia phased out single-use lightweight plastic bags, with major supermarkets leading the transition ahead of regulatory requirements in most states. You bring your own bags. You buy a reusable bag if you did not bring one. This is now so deeply normal in Australian grocery culture that the absence of it seems strange to Australians visiting America. The pile of single-use bags accumulating at the checkout, the 30 bags it takes to carry a moderate grocery shop, the drawer at home full of bags that were used once and will take centuries to decompose. American moms who had been meaning to switch to reusable bags and had not quite gotten there yet described the Australian system as the external motivation they needed. Not a lecture, not a policy discussion, simply a system that had already made the decision and expected them to adapt to it, which they did, within a week, usually. Let us talk about the section of the supermarket that produces the most sustained amazement in American visitors: the fresh food markdowns. Australian supermarkets mark down fresh food as it approaches its use-by or best-before date. This is not unusual. American supermarkets do this too. But the scale, the consistency, and the cultural normalization of seeking out these markdowns in Australia is different. There are Australian families who plan their grocery shop around the markdown schedule, who know which days and which times the butcher counter at their local Woolworths marks down the mince, who time their arrival to catch the bread from yesterday's bake at half price, who have a relationship with the cadence of their supermarket's fresh food reduction schedule, the way Americans have a relationship with weekly sales circulars. This is not considered shameful. It is not something people lower their voices to talk about. It is considered smart shopping. It is considered the kind of resourcefulness that people openly share with each other. The tip about the Tuesday afternoon chicken markdown, the knowledge that the fish counter at this particular store reduces prices at 4 in the afternoon, the information that a specific store's bakery marks down unsold loaves at a particular time. This informal knowledge network around fresh food markdowns exists across Australian supermarket culture as a form of community intelligence about how to eat well cheaply. And for American moms who have been conditioned by American supermarket culture, in which markdown fresh food occupies a stigmatized corner of the store, and in which seeking it out carries a faint social cost, the discovery that in Australia this behavior is normal and shared and community reinforced is another one of those small but significant recalibrations. Now let us bring this together, because the individual things, the tomatoes, the chicken, the bread, the deli, the checkout, the markdowns, they are not really what this video is about. They are evidence of something larger. Something that American moms, in particular, are often well positioned to notice because they are frequently the primary grocery shopper in their households, because they have been thinking about food in terms of their family's health and budget for years, and because they arrive at the Australian supermarket with a decade or more of baseline experience from which to measure the difference. What they are noticing is the relationship between a country and its food supply, the assumptions embedded in what a mainstream, non-premium, accessible to everyone supermarket is expected to provide, the baseline quality that the system treats as standard rather than as a premium to be priced accordingly, the regulatory environment that shapes what is in the food before you buy it, the labor conditions that shape the checkout experience, the environmental norms that shape what you carry at home in. These are not accidents. They are the accumulated result of policy decisions and cultural expectations and regulatory frameworks that are different in Australia and America in ways that show up in the everyday, unremarkable Tuesday afternoon experience of buying groceries. Australia does not have a perfect food system. Processed food is abundant. Junk food is everywhere. Food insecurity is a real and persistent problem for a significant portion of the population. The major supermarket chains have significant market power and have faced criticism for the way they treat suppliers and for pricing practices that affect what low-income Australians can afford to eat. The picture is not clean, but the baseline, the standard that a mainstream supermarket is expected to meet, the quality that is assumed to be the floor rather than a premium, is different. And American moms who encounter that different baseline for the first time describe it less as a discovery about Australia and more as a discovery about home, about what they had been given, about what they had accepted without knowing there was something else to compare it to. And that is the discovery that nobody warns them about. Not the hot chicken, not the tomatoes, not the shortbread ingredient list. It is the realization that the grocery store they have shopped in their whole life was not the inevitable product of how supermarkets have to be. It was a choice. A very specific, very particular, very American choice about what a supermarket is for and who it is for, and what standard it owes the people who walk through its doors. And now they know. And the next time they push a trolley through their regular store at home, they are going to feel it. That small, specific, grocery-induced grief. The knowledge that things could be different sitting quietly in the background while they reach for the tomatoes that look perfect and taste of nothing. If you are an American mom who has been to Australia, I want you to tell me in the comments what the moment was. The specific moment when you stopped in the aisle and felt it. Because I guarantee it was not what you expected to feel in a supermarket. And if you are Australian and you are watching this wondering what all the fuss is about, that is exactly the point. That is the whole point. The best things are the ones you are so used to that you have completely forgotten to be grateful for them.